Another one of the Trump campaign promises has now officially been broken. And one of the reasons that we were supposed to vote for Donald Trump, according to the MAGAs, along with a long list of other things that were both rational and completely nonsense, was the idea that the Democrats will just simply spend the entire country into a permanent, unpayable debt. Well, one of the reasons why MAGAs decided to vote for Trump was because he said he would eliminate the national debt in 8 years. Which is a really fanciful claim if you talk to anybody who knows what they're talking about. To eliminate the national debt, it would take a hell of a lot longer than 8 years. But when has logic and facts ever gotten in the way of the MAGA crowd? Now, a new report shows that the GDP to debt ratio is now higher than it's ever been since World War II. That's right, the last time the United States was in this kind of financial situation, the world was at war. There was literally a global conflict going on that needed to be paid for, and even ended up eliminating the market in many circumstances because it would have been unable to keep up. State ownership of things, etc. in the U.S. history, look it up. So that's where we are now. Trump has now increased the debt to GDP ratio to the highest levels since there was a global conflict going on. And that's where the United States is right now. Now, these same people are projecting that if these trends continue, for example, the presidency of Donald Trump continues the way it has, assuming he doesn't make it any worse, the entire GDP would be equal to the debt by the year 2028, and that by the year 2048, the debt would reach 152% of the GDP. Now, of course, this is assuming if trends continue, which they seem to keep doing in this case. However, one of the things that I thought was very interesting was how Republicans blasted the Democrats unendingly, particularly Obama, for the raising of the debt ceiling, for deficit spending in certain situations. Then one can make the Keynesian argument that it was necessary in order to get out of the Great Recession that was coming as a result of many policies and decades leading up to the actual incident. But now that Trump's doing it, well, they're kind of really quiet on it. One of the biggest contributors to the national debt was Ronald Reagan. This is also something Republicans have been very quiet about, and they have not been saying anything. Now, of course, Democrats have increased the debt as well. In fact, every successive government has done it, because it's literally something they need to do in order to stay afloat. This is something the U.S. government needs to do in order to keep functioning. So to simply blame Republicans or Democrats for this is just simply incorrect. This is a fault of the system itself, not the individual leaders or politicians who made up certain policies. But it is interesting to notice the great Republican hypocrisy in this situation. Now, of course, in a situation like this, there's not going to be any tax increases for the rich. Now, those who own capital in capitalism will never be asked to be carried the burden of the system, even though they are the ones that benefit off it the most. Now, there's going to be more tax cuts for the rich under Trump, just as there was under George Bush, just as there were tax cuts for the rich under Obama. And that trend is going to continue. So it seems like, once again, it's going to be the middle class that actually pays, because you can't really tax the poor when the poor don't have anything. You know, that's one of the complexities of a modern capitalist society. You can't have the people that are benefiting off of the system paying taxes, but you can't tax the people who don't have anything. But I digress. A lot of this is stuff that you already know. Well, this means benefits are going to be cut. Anything that people need in order to survive are going to be what is cut from the national budget in order to try to eliminate as much of this budget shortfall as possible. They're not going to eliminate the budget shortfall, but they're going to come as close as they can. That usually means the cutting of services and privatizing them for profit, rather than keeping something on that is, something that's profitable and then just selling it off. But you know how that works. Well, the problem here is that, there's no secret, everybody knows, the vast majority of the U.S. national debt, the U.S. national budget, is war spending. And this has been true basically almost the entire existence of the United States. Of course, there are some times where there were exceptions, but in our modern history, that has certainly been the case. War has always taken a precedent for spending over anything else, even people who are dying of poverty. Now, we should understand this in the proper context. This is not something Trump did, Obama did, George Bush did, Bill Clinton did, etc. This is something the system needs to happen. The wealth of the first world is entirely dependent on the plundering of the third world, and the way you do that, in many cases, but not all cases, is through military conquest. This is why Gaddafi needed to be killed, his country burned to the ground, and slavery brought back into it. This is why Syria has had to be absolutely devastated for the benefit of American capital, and some other countries as well, the UK, Japan, Australia, some others who would also benefit from this. And there's the example of Afghanistan, where the country has been in a war for almost 2 decades simply as a fight over the mineral wealth that is inside the country. And Canada, being one of the biggest countries in the world, if not the biggest country in the world for mining, has a very large hand in that due to our huge hand in the mining industry. So it's not like this DSA kind of idea where if we just vote for somebody else, then, the wars will just stop happening. The system is dependent on these wars. The system is dependent on supporting puppet groups inside of the Middle East. The U.S. does not put up with Israel's atrocities because they just have somebody in power who likes them. They do it because Israel reinforces U.S. interests in the region. The same with Saudi Arabia. It's not something that some guy chooses to do. It's a part of the functioning of the system itself, and is not going to go away just because you vote somebody else into office. It really should be obvious by now, after all these centuries, that simply voting somebody in does not change the system. You have to change the system. You don't reform it, you get rid of it. You dig to the roots, you dig it up, you eliminate the whole thing, and you replace it with a whole new one. You don't walk into it with a smile on your face saying how you're going to do the nice social democratic reforms and think somehow you're going to change 100+ years of capitalist history and functioning. So, once again, the MAGAs prove that they have absolutely no idea what they're talking about when it comes to bringing people into office to do things that they want to do. And it also proves, once again, that the DSA and many other social democrats who like to call themselves socialists, which is rather insulting, also do not know what they are doing. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.